So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. I'll just wait for 30 more seconds so everyone has the time to come in. I'll be back in 30 seconds. Yes, again, good afternoon, everyone. Let's start again. Welcome to today's webinar. It's really fantastic to see such a great turnout with participants from not only Netherlands, Belgium, but also Germany, Denmark, USA, and even other countries as well. So we really have a lot of interest from a mix of different roles, different backgrounds, which is super exciting. So my name is Eric, and I'll be your host for today's session. And today's session is all around, to prepare you for the next wave of sustainability obligations that is coming. So this really is a follow-up on the article we recently published via the Fashion United platform, which was one of the best read articles this year. So for today, we have some great speakers for you today. We have Anja from Delogue, ESG expert, and Yolanda Kooi from tex.tracer. And myself, I'm with TCOG and Microsoft ERP implementation partner specifically for fashion and retail companies in the Benelux. So we really have three different perspectives on sustainability from technology companies for you today. And we really hope that by the end of this webinar, you'll be fully up to date on the latest developments regarding ESG, such as CSRD and CSDDD timelines, etc. So before we dive in, just a few housekeeping notes. This webinar will be recorded for those who couldn't attend, but also to be shared later on within your organizations. Another one is that everyone's fully muted for now, but feel free to ask any questions in this in the chat function or question box. And we'll try to answer the questions during the session if possible, or at least come back to on that later on. We have about approximately 1 hour. I hope we will be we'll make it within 1 hour because we really have a packed agenda for today. So talking about the agenda, let's go to the next slide. Let me just outline the agenda for you today. We'll start with some introductions for you to really get to know our speakers a little bit. Then we move on to Delogue, Anja, who will provide an overview of the current landscape as well as some deep dives on CSRD, CSDDD, and then we move on to tex.tracer, and we will learn how this platform will enable you to comply with regulations and really increase your brand value. And after that, I want to talk a little bit about the new functionalities in the Microsoft platform, so the new Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability, as well as some new functionalities that were released in Business Central in the ERP solution of Microsoft 2 weeks ago. Then we will wrap up. Yeah, and again, feel free to submit any questions during the webinar. Now, to move on to the introductions. First up, we have Anja, of course. Anja is ESG advisor with really a wealth of knowledge in certifications on the sustainability parts, and yeah, I'm really glad that she's here to bring a really unique perspective on ESG. So Anja, perhaps you could briefly introduce yourself as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Eric, for the introduction. Yep, so my name is Anja Patchett, working with Delogue for about six months now. Prior to that, I was a consultant within the fashion and textile industry, helping brands with, working with certifications and management of that, supply chain management, due diligence, etc. So everything within that area.
Yes, thank you very much, Anya. And then we have Yolanda. Yolanda is co-founder of tex.tracer, a blockchain solution for fashion companies, and she's really an enthusiastic advocate for sustainability in the fashion industry. So we're very glad to have you here, Yolanda. But perhaps you can briefly introduce yourself as well.
Well, thanks, Eric. Great to be here and really looking forward to this hour together in basically explaining our stories. And the tex.tracer story is one of, basically, we're on a mission to trace 10 billion items by 2030. And to do so, we want to work with as many brands and retailers as possible. And at the same time, it's not just collecting data, but it's much more about what we do with data. And that's what I'd love to dive into today.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. And we are really looking forward to your story. Then myself, I'm like I said, I'm with TCOG, and I really help businesses in the fashion and retail industry to optimize business processes, really creating efficiency in financial, purchase, supply chain processes, as well as all types of integrations to, for example, PLM systems, B2C e-commerce environments, B2B e-commerce environments, marketplaces, third-party logistics providers, etc. So we're really closely working with Microsoft, and Microsoft really has a really strong vision about sustainability, which I want to share with you today. So let's get started for now. So I'm really pleased to introduce Anya for the story around the landscape surrounding ESG. Anya?
Great, thank you so much. So I think I have control now, I assume.
Yeah. I will give you control.
Yeah.
Just gave you control, but it will take a while, so I'll go to the next slide. So yeah,
thank you. All right, so I'm gonna lay the lands for today, starting off with the current legislative landscape, which I think, let's see if I can get to the next slide. There we go. So the way that we are, I'm going to start from the top and go a bit down in detail in some of the different legislation. So let's start with where we started a couple of years ago. It's been now. So March 2022, EU launched this strategy, this textile strategy, where we all saw that the EU launched this sort of battle towards the textile industry in how we've produced up until now. They wanted to attack this way that we are producing, both in terms of how are these products we're making, but how are they performing, but also in terms of how are they actually made and what are the outcome afterwards. So they wanted to look at how the long-lasting, the repairability, recyclability, etc. They wanted to look at sort of the performance of the garments, but they also wanted to look at the chemicals, and of course also to look at how were they actually made, both socially, what is the impact socially of the products that we're making, and what are the environmental impact as well. So as of now, we are at a state where it hasn't, all of them at least, hasn't become legislation yet, but this was sort of a plan, a strategy until 2030. So if we dive into, because it has definitely been this paradigm shift for the fashion industry. We haven't been used to this before. I myself have worked in the industry for 15 plus so years, and this is very, very new to us to work in this way, to be able to not only ensure that we have as much data as possible for our products, but also to ensure that that data proves and can be proven, but proves as well that we have products that are long lasting, that are socially and environmentally responsible. And how do we actually prove that? So it's been a game changer for the industry that we now have this strategy that becomes law. We haven't really done that prior to now. So it is definitely a very big change for us to work in this way. Now let's see if it works. Come on. Yeah, there we go. So this is a very, I think maybe we'll share the slides with you afterwards so that you can go into details as well. I'm not going to go through every point here, but this is just a very big overview of the different legislations that we've now seen, which is combined with the EU taxonomy. So this is really where we dive into the sustainable activities in the EU. We need to, they of course need all of these proposals, implementation period, and then we go into what do they actually then cover, which sort of companies do they cover. Now, if we dive even further down to it, I'm going to deep dive into some of the ones that we have here. The one of them, which I think many are hearing and many are thinking, what does that actually mean for me, is the CSRD and of course the CSDDD, both of which have these very, very large reporting requirements. And what they do mean, because of course both of them are targeting large companies. As of now, at least, they're targeting large companies with plus 1,000 employees, and for the CSRD it's less, but at least it's a lot of employees, and not that many companies are required to do that as of now. But it does mean that it has this trickle down effect, which I think is the one that we really need to focus on in the fashion industry. Because one thing is that it's larger companies that need to report. I think we definitely need to be aware of this, but what we really need to be aware of, that these reporting requirements for the larger companies, if we talk about the big key accounts, the big e-commerce platforms that do need to report, those are the customers of the brands that we are working with. So even though that they're not necessarily legislation-wise required to report, they are at least required to deliver the information to these, which means that there is a very big need for this data collecting to be able to deliver information for these reporting requirements. So that's really one that everybody needs to be aware of. There we go. The other one that I wanted to, of course, dive into, because that is the one that I think a lot of you are definitely focusing a lot on, is the ESPR, the Eco-Design for Sustainable Products Regulation. Now, this is the one where it's specified for the DPP, Digital Product Passport in the EU. The eco-design regulation touches upon all of the things that the strategy also mentioned. So those are the circular aspects of the way that we want products in the EU to be, not only textiles, but in general products in the EU. We want them to be more durable, easier to reuse, easier to disassemble and assemble again, easier to repair, recycle, etc. So we want products in the EU that are long lasting, of course, but if they then are at the end of life at some stage, we need to be able to ensure that they can be used for something else. So it's a matter of thinking differently about the products that are in the EU. Now, when we then dive into the ESPR, we see this digital product passport, the DPP. And the DPP is also something that is mentioned to be related to all products. But of course, there is this priority in terms of where will the EU start to focus. And what we do know as of now is that textiles, primarily garments and shoes, are definitely a focus, or will be top priority. So that is why we also are in a bit of a time situation. The ESPR, this is a tentative timeline from the European Commission, saying that what is happening this year, at least, is that they're very much focused on getting into line in terms of getting ready for the regulations of the DPP. The Eco Design Forum is started the first meetings in terms of figuring this out. And then if we dive into more specifically the DPP, we know as of now that by mid to late 2025, the delegated acts of the DPP will be ready. Now, because the textile industry is being focused on, those are the ones that will, of course, be ready as some of the first ones, not the first one, but at least some of the first ones. And there you can also see on the timeline that means that the adoption period is expected at least to be mid to end 2027. Now, if we dive into that eco-design for sustainable products, there is this 2 types of product specifications that the delegated acts will focus on. One is the performance requirements. Those are the circular ones. Those are the ones where you need to make products and sell products in the EU that are long-lasting, recyclable, recycled, etc. The other aspect is the information requirements. So those are the ones where we need a lot of information, much more information that we're used to collect on these garments or these products. We need much more information. Supply chains. We need to know where are our products coming from. What do they consist of? What is in that product? What are the chemical components or content that are in that product, and are they and they have, of course, to be do no harm. And the final thing is, of course, in terms of the environmental aspect. So what is the environmental impact of the product? All those information will also be a requirement, and they're at least looking at them in terms of the differentiating how specific they will be. So the 2 different ways that the EU was looking at it is we have the DPP system, which is the platform. This is the IT architecture that they're building, or they will be building, and that will be the same for all products. Now, according to the European Commission, that will be the same for all products. So in terms of a registry, centralized registry and a web portal, that will be the same for all products. Now, where they do differentiate is what will be in the DPP, what data will be in that DPP. And those are the different parameters where they will most likely be very, very different, because we compare batteries to a piece of garment. So there will be differentiating parameters for those different types of products, and that is what will be decided in the delegated acts. So what we have for now from the European Commission is that we need to get ready to have an existing product passport. We need to get ready to have it, like the physical, the QR code, what it will be. We need to get ready for that. Not necessarily be ready with it tomorrow, but at least we need to get ready with it to have the existing. I'll get back to what needs to be behind it as well. You, of course, need to make sure that it's complete. That's to do with the data points. And I also think that, of course, Yolanda will also touch upon this point, because there are all these data points that needs to be complete to have this existing digital product passport. The data, of course, needs to be authentic, reliable, and verified. That's very important. You can't put anything in there that isn't documented. And they also require this backup copy with a third-party product passport service provider. Now, the final thing is also really important, because that is the one that needs to be towards the consumer. And that's also, you know, the dealers and the online marketplaces, of course, have to have access to these digital product passports that has been created. So what is it that we know so far? This is just a summary of basically what I've just said. We need to look at the circularity of the product. We need to know the transparency and, of course, the environmental impact. So those are sort of the 3 different things that we need to make sure and look at of our products that we are creating. And why is it then so? Why are we speaking about it now? I said 2027, 2028. Why is it so important that we talk about it now? Now, one thing is that the delegated acts, once they are adopted for the textile industry or any industry that we are talking about, the companies will have maximum 18 months to comply with that. Some of the different they are talking about, some of them will only be a year, but for textiles we do expect that it will be 18 months to comply with this, which means, and if we think about it, in the textile industry or in the lifestyle industry, many of you have approximately a year in terms of product development, which means that you start a year prior. Now, if the implementation period is only 18 months and you start a year prior, then you actually have to be ready quite fast, because you have this whole implementation period together with the product development period. Now, that doesn't really leave a lot of time. So this timeline I've made here is, of course, that, you know, this year needs to be ready. You need to get ready with all of your old data, the existing data, the data that you already have. Where is that? Where is it placed right now? And where do I need to place it to ensure that I actually have the correct data to be able to collect it and to be able to deliver it to other platforms, integration, etc. 2025 is for research and creating the new data. Now, that is the things that you haven't already looked at. And that, of course, means that you then are ready for 2026 to be able to start collecting data ready for the DPP in 2027. So that is sort of the timeline that everyone has to be ready with. Summing up everything, there is of course opportunities and challenges in this. EU legislation can in general be quite a big thing to grasp. So what I do have to say, and that I think is really important, is that we need to see this as an opportunity. As an industry, we also need to see that if we do become ready, if we do get ready and we do sort of already start now to collect all of the data, ensure that we have all of the data, then it also becomes a competitive advantage. You can differentiate yourself towards others. If you get ready and you're there and you have the digital product passport, you have all the data behind. One thing is that you are legislation-wise compliant, but you also have a competitive advantage in terms of your competitors, which is really great. But of course, the challenge here is that we as an industry aren't really used to all of this collecting the data. It's a difficult one. So that one is, of course, the one that we really need to focus on, and we really need to work on to get this architecture ready. So 4 things to focus on. Of course, start by, one thing is participating in this webinar, but of course also in other terms, participating, reading a lot and familiarizing yourself with what does DPP entail. Second thing is have a look at your products. Are there any of them that as of now are maybe not compliant or able to be compliant? Then maybe it's now you need to stop producing them, produce something else that can be compliant. Then, as I mentioned, digital infrastructure. Ensure that you have the correct digital infrastructure to be able to be compliant, to collect the data and use it correctly. And the final thing is, and I think that's a really important one, is of course, ensure that you have suppliers that are able to help you, because that is one thing that we at least, and I think a lot of us are focusing on, is that all of this data is coming from somewhere, and I'm not seeing that that data is going to come from that many other places than with your suppliers. So those are really important as partnerships. That was it for me in terms of legislation, at least. Eric, do we have any questions as of now before I move on?
Yeah, well, there was one good question, and the question was if slides are shared, and we confirmed that. So all slides and recording are shared, and no other questions. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box.
Yes. Yeah, there are a lot of information in the slides, so definitely we will share them afterwards. Okay, so if no other questions, I think I'll just move on to dive into a bit about what I am working with in Delogue. I feel like there we go. So diving a bit into the platform that I'm working for. We are a platform, a PLM platform, a product lifecycle management platform, founded in 2011 by Rege Biel, who back then saw a need for a platform that could combine the product creation, the product development, together with the collaboration and communication with suppliers, with the factory level, to be able to have this transparent collaboration in the industry. And of course, since 2011, the mission has changed or developed, and we are today a platform where you can collect all of the different data points that is needed to further on use for reporting needs, etc. So we are a data collecting platform for the product development stage. And we of course believe that a lot of the information that you need to further do calculation and supply chain management stems from a PLM system. So that is what we're really focused on and really working on. These are just some of our brands. We work with 250 plus brands globally. And of course, we work with even more suppliers. Now, if I dive into that one, what we do is we have a platform where the brands that choose to have us, they have their different users, and then they have free supplier logins, so they can onboard, and we help them onboard their suppliers to our platform, which means that all of them also have access to our platform, and all of the communication, sample flow, everything happens in there, style files, etc. So everything happens in the platform, almost getting rid of the emails and everything, which also means that communication in our platform is transparent to everybody who's working in the brand as well, or in our customers' companies. Yeah. Now,
Anja,
yes.
I have one good question. It relates to the DPP. So we have to go back a little bit, but there was one good question from Bianca. She asked, how can your product be non-compliant with DPP?
If it doesn't have all of the information, or if you don't have the documentation, if you're not able to have the documentation, if you can't prove what you're saying.
Okay, so it's really the data that you have to support it with data.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you can't put it's to do with the information that needs to be documented. So you can't put information anywhere if it's not valid or documented. So that's, and that actually tangles into some of the other other legislation as well, in terms of consumer-facing one, where you can't say something is 100% organic if you don't have the documentation to prove it. But of course, I kind of see where Bianca's going with it, because of course, in theory, you can of course have a DPP where you don't have these, organic content, etc. You can of course have that, but I mean, yeah, that maybe you won't have as good a DPP. So I understand the question, but I think it's more to do with the fact that you need to prove what you're actually saying. So an example, the supply chain, a mapping of a supply chain. I think Yolanda can maybe also agree to this, that a mapping of a supply chain, of course, also needs to be validated in some way. So if you need to map a supply chain, that needs to be valid in some way. And if it's not validated by documentation, then it isn't really compliant with the DPP requirements. Does that answer?
Yeah. Just a very quick one. I hope indeed that helps Bianca, and otherwise we can elaborate on it at a later stage, I guess.
Perfect, Yolanda. Perfect. Yeah. Good. Okay. So just to, so I think let's see if I. There we go. So the way that we, of course, as I mentioned previously as well, this sort of data, we have a lot of data in PLM in our PLM platform, but we of course also rely on other platforms for data. So it is this collecting this data and then be able to use that data towards the different other platforms that exist in the market. And that is, of course, to do with the DPP. It also has to do with, in relation to DPP, the CO2 emissions, the carbon footprint of a product or a product group. So it's got to do with all of these different, where a collection of data is needed in the PLM, the ERP, and the PIM system, but that is then to be used to other places where you need to deliver all of this. So it is about this digital architecture that, of course, needs to be ready. There we go. And of course, mentioning this as well, data requests comes from the market and comes from everywhere. And then we, of course, needs to enable the feed of that together with other platforms as well, in terms of footprint calculation and supply chain mapping, etc. So it's all to do with this collaboration between platforms, integration between platforms, to ensure that we have this data, that we collect all of this data in terms of the data needs as well. Now, I think I also mentioned it a bit earlier, but I'll dive into this one, because one of the things that is really difficult as of now is, of course, if you're working in Excel sheets with your product development, it makes it that much more difficult to collect the information and report on it further or deliver it further to other platforms. Now, we need to make it as easy as possible and as smooth as possible between the different platforms, between the different providers of what you need. So as we say, Excel isn't enough anymore. We cannot rely on Excel. That's both to do with the with the tech packs that you can't create those in Excel anymore, because you can't just collectively in an easy way at least put those together. The other one is, of course, following up on your documentation. A lot of the ones that I speak to and have spoken to is doing all of this control in Excel. Now, of course, it's about finding the enabler to collect all of these things in a place that can help you with the reminding of when is my next audit, when is the next certification update, and so on. And we have that in Delogue, because we do have a place in Delogue where we can collect all of these documentation that you need for your products, that you need both to, of course, be compliant in terms of legislation but also what you need to deliver for your key accounts. So we have a place in Delogue where you can create all of the different documentation and orders and test reports, and then, of course, combine it with the styles that you have or products that you have in our platform, which enables you to be aware of this in the beginning of the stages when you are starting production, starting development, starting to create your beautiful products. Already there, actually be aware of the fact if that is compliant. Do you have the social audits you need to prove that, etc. So that is where we see it really important to be aware of these things already there, and of course also throughout the process and by the production stage, but of course being aware of it in the whole time. The final thing, which was also mentioned in terms of the DPP, is of course circular design, and that happens in the beginning. The design phase is some of the most important phase when you think about circular, because that is where you can really emphasize that a product needs to be circular in this and this way. Assembly-wise, disassembly-wise, longevity, the quality of it. There are so many parameters that you have an effect on in the beginning that really does ensure that your product circular-wise can enter the circle at least. I think that was it for me. Thank you so much. Are there any questions until we move on to Yolanda?
Yeah, we have one question from Ron. What is the minimal you need to have in data to be compliant? Where does it show what data you really do need to have?
That's a really good question, and actually not really able to answer as of now, unfortunately, because what we need to get to is these delegated acts. So we cannot, as of now, say that you can only have this and that's fine, because and I'm not gonna I'm not gonna say that, because then we are gonna get to end of 2025 and then it's even more extensive. So I would be afraid to say that already, which is why we're really pushing the fact that as much data as possible is actually the requirement right now. And then let's see when the delegated acts come how specific we have to be. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Anja. Thank you so much for this story. Very good to hear. I now give the control to Yolanda. Let's see.
Thanks a lot, Eric. And yes, thanks, Anja. I mean, I think it's brilliant what you've explained already on with regards to rules and legislations which are coming into force, and how also really PLM and Delogue is the basis for all your new products. And at tex.tracer, we're looking at creating a better fashion ecosystem through verified transparency, because once you start with collecting data, it's very important to make sure, as Anja also explained, that you make sure that the data points are authentic, reliable, and verified. And that's why we at tex.tracer focus on that part day in, day out. And I realize that my controller is at this stage not responding, so I'm going to do it in a different way. There we go. So let's create that basis for the needed change. And how do we do that? Well, basically, we start off with collecting data from TCOG and or PLM. And we're then talking about product data and order data. That order data is used by us to get in touch with your contractual partners, tier 1 or tier 0, for them to then connect with tier 2, 3, and 4, collecting data about their social and environmental status on company and facility level, to then continue with product footprint information. That's basically scope 3. So some of you may have heard of this already. Scope 1, 2, 3 being scope 1 and 2, your own organizations, the flights and traveling of your employees. But in most cases, scope 3 is really the biggest part of your carbon emissions, and this is can be well up to or even over 95% of your carbon emissions. And that's why it's so important to understand the impact of your product footprint. Now, we collect that data so that you can analyze it. The analysis of that data we actually don't do by ourselves, because that's a very much specialized industry, and we work there with your partner of choice. For example, in Holland, Be Aware, Score, and Green Story, but also the likes of Climate Partners, EcoChain, and many others, Higg Score. And once you have collected all the data, we provide you with a risk analysis so that you can define hotspots and mitigate the risks. And this then actually tails back to CSRD to make sure that you can comply with the upcoming rules and regulations. And there, where you do not have to comply yet, you can at least provide the information to your larger clients, as Anja advised before. Then once you have all that data, you can get ready for the ESPR with the digital product passport, which we provide you with. And also that in that we cooperate with GS1. As Anja explained, there's a difference between a digital product passport data and the system in itself. It's all under development at this stage, but we're super happy to see that GS1 has now built the digital link, which basically creates the chance for you to communicate all kinds of data to all kinds of parties, which means that basically your QR code on products could actually be the future barcode with all the barcoding details for your point of sale material, but also for warehouse management systems, as well as for the consumer. And the consumer information is provided by tex.tracer, which then shows all the data requirements that are listed or were listed by Anja before. At the same time, you can communicate this information also directly through your web shop, making sure that you communicate third-party verified data, which is reliable and authentic as well. And we have widgets and plugins with Shopify and Magento and several other web shop providers. Now, then let's look at the data which we gather. First of all, here on the right, a little video of our dashboard. Basically, we show you your transparency, social and environmental data, suppliers that you're working with, certifications which are expiring soon, and most importantly, on the far right, top right, sorry, your actions for today, so that always you know what is your next step. And whether you are a CSR manager, a buyer, or a CFO, you will find your specific actions in this area so that you know what's happening. And underneath your actions, you will also see the actions of your suppliers so that they know what to do. And with this, we help you to comply with rules and regulations, but also, very important, reduce workload. Because we know, unfortunately, this is something you have to deal with. Let's make sure that instead of taking a lot of time on only collecting data, that we do that for you as a platform so that you can have a dialogue with your supplier and create the actual change which is necessary. In such a way, we often say we're only a means to an end. In the end, it's much more important what you do with the information which we help you collect than actually collecting that data. So reducing workload, and with after collecting the data and mitigating those risks, you can really increase brand value and use it to future-proof your business. And this is what Anja tapped into as well. Like, let's make sure that you not only see these rules and legislations as something that only you have to comply with, but use it to your advantage. And let us, as your tech stack providers, help you to achieve that goal. Then I've been talking about authenticity, reliable data and verified data a bit as well. And I'd like to tap into that a bit more, because for us, verified data is really about collecting supply chain data step by step from each supplier of your in your supply chain. And you may wonder, how do we do that? Well, we start in a very simplistic way. Simplicity is key for us with everything we do. By connecting with your tier 1 or tier 0 first, asking them to provide us with the details of their supply chain, and there, wherever they have no access to the previous step in the chain, we will ask the last partner that is known for their supplier. So that way we can get all the way back to the end of the supply chain, or as you may as well say, the beginning of the supply chain. Also, we collect that data from primary source, then we make sure that all uploaded data, like company pictures, certifications, but also packing lists to confirm that a supplier is properly part of the supply chain for a specific product. So we're talking product level here. We provide all those documents with time and geolocation stamps so that we know who, where, and when has uploaded the information. And the last example I mentioned, for instance, a packing list or an invoice as uploaded by a yarn supplier to provide to confirm that they have sent the yarn to the knitter, is then sent via the platform to the knitter for authorization. And with that, we create a peer-to-peer review and actually a digital handshake saying, yes, these two partners are related and are actual supply chain partners. That data is then sent to the blockchain. It's a private blockchain. The most important part that you should remember of that before forgetting it quickly is that it creates immutable data, making sure that people cannot hide from their data by saying, oh no, it's not true, I've changed it. We will know when data is changed. And we, with that, try to tell suppliers that they should actually commit to data. And this is really about taking responsibility and making people accountable for their data. And this is something we foresee in the future that is going to be very important, because we don't only want it all to be about rules. We don't want it to be only about the certifications that we often, as European companies, impose on our often Far East suppliers. It's very much about working together in creating the future of our industry by giving suppliers the chance to be responsible and take responsibility for their actions. So that's a long story about how we create that verified data. And what does that actually look like in our platform? Well, it's showing you an overview step by step of all the supply chain partners in the chain, with information about who has uploaded data, SGS test reports on product level as well. And this way you can be certain that data is verified. And as I'm saying, you're certain, we know that we'll never be certain. So this data is not 100% reliable. However, it is a lot more reliable than data which is often gathered in Excel sheets. Now, once you have collected all that data on facility and product level, you can move on a step and basically creating an overview of your footprint data by collecting up to 200 data points for each product. Now, that may seem like a lot, but often in non-automated processes, footprint data collection is done via Excel and email, and your tier 1 supplier will be asked to provide you with a lot of information. And now we're saying, instead of asking them for those 200 questions, we already know 10 supply chain partners and ask each of them 20 to 30 questions. All that information can be communicated to your LCA partner of choice, and so with that you have your environmental data. Now, once you have all that data, you can then move on to create risk assessments and hotspot analysis in our ESG dashboard. And last but not least, just a little bit about that digital product passport. A lot of our 150 brands are actually using already a QR code on their product, showing product journey and footprint data, so that they communicate this to their consumer, and they add next step details as well. And let me know if you want to know more about that, because that is exactly what Anja spoke about as well, about basically creating a proper R letter and making sure that we extend the lifetime of a product as long as possible. You can share this information on your web shop as well with the plugin which we can provide you. And with that, you can be certain that you comply with the rules and regulations. And let me be clear, we don't know exactly all the rules and regulations. And that's why we continue to follow it, so that you can easily adapt once we know the final details about the eco-design part. Now, as mentioned before, we work with over 150 brands all over the world, over 60 million items traced. And our story is very much about automating your process so that you can reduce your workload. And we can only work well if we, in the end, communicate well with your suppliers, not just with you. And that's where we're really pleased to be confirming that our client success team is continuing to receive excellent ratings from our clients. Last but not least, of course, we're happy to communicate some of our customers and partners. And then I'd like to actually move over to you, Eric, and give the floor to you. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you, Jolanda, for the inspiring story, and very good to see how your platform really contributes to more transparency in the supply chain. Because then, talking about supply chain, then it hits ERP. But before I want to talk about that a little bit, there was one question. Let me just have a look. Yeah, so one question of Hawaii, if I say it correctly. Hi, Yolanda, could you please explain how tex.tracer platform increases brand value?
Fair point, very fair point, because I did not elaborate on that all too much. But basically what we think is, and what we know is that we see more and more challenges for greenwashing. In the Netherlands, for instance, the ACM, Authority of Consumers and Markets, have charged multiple retailers with greenwashing claims. And this is something you really do not want to happen. And if you communicate facts, you can act confidently and make sure that you are not creating issues with your consumers. And we believe that that is really truly creating brand value, and particularly because in the end you will see this returned as well in conversion on client level. And I hope that's just a very short answer, but otherwise we can elaborate on it at a later stage. I hope that answers your question. And if you want to hear more, let me know. Just get in touch. Yolanda at tex.tracer.
And there was one more question, Yolanda. Will any of these reports be a requirement for a B2C fashion stores or only fashion brands?
Okay, very good point. The B2C fashion stores, if you're a multi-brand retailer, then at this stage, the reportings that I'm talking about now, it should basically be provided by the brands that are servicing you. So basically, this all has to do, it's in a way similar to the extended producer responsibility, where the importer and the person or company who's selling the products on the market is responsible for the data. And in that respect, it's often actually in the end the brand and not the retailer, even though you may consider that you as a retailer are selling it. It's a very thin line, and I think it's also something that we that really depends. So I'd like to. It's not an easy answer. Let's put it like that.
Okay. Okay. Well, maybe you know, if the answer is not fully clear, then they always can contact you for the long answer, so to say.
I need to know a little bit more to give you a proper answer. Indeed. Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So so thank you again, Yolanda. Now I want to briefly touch the developments in the Microsoft ecosystem, because as a Microsoft ERP partner for fashion and retail company, we are working very closely with Microsoft, and we know that Microsoft has been very actively pursuing sustainability initiatives. So for this part of the webinar, I thought, how cool would it be to give a small peek behind the curtain of Microsoft efforts on the technology they provide to be ESG compliant. So I want to talk a little bit about what they have done, let's say in the field for the last 2 to 3 years. So to start off, in 2020, Microsoft really announced the sustainability commitments and detailed plan for working towards a more sustainable future, and that starts with the accountability for its own footprint. So by 2030, the company really aims to be carbon negative, water positive, zero waste, and also protect more land than it uses by 2025. So it basically touches all aspects of its operations, really from the campuses they have, but also the data center devices, etc. So they are really dedicated, to this journey, but also to share the learnings and really be transparent about the progress they are making. Now, if you look on the technology side, they really create, obviously, the technology that empower organizations to grow towards sustainability. So what Microsoft has done is they created the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability, as they call it, and it's been in the market for about 1.5 years now. And it's really a platform for customers, but it also helps Microsoft in their sustainability journey. And one of the key learnings they found was that to reliably report the sustainability progress, you really need a good solid ESG data foundation, because it really helps you defining sustainability commitments, track your progress, and in the end drive the transformation. So how does that deliver business value? Yolanda and Anja briefly touched it as well. So it really is in the first place to help you make progress here on the reporting side, to drive efficiencies and reduce costs with respect to water or energy, but also because stakeholders' expectations are rising. For example, it's known that Gen Z really values sustainability and expects employers to prioritize environmental responsibility, but also to, it's been mentioned before, to reduce the risk related of not complying to the regulations. Now, what it will take to solve this challenge is really that you have to transform the data silos you have into really standards-driven, analysis-ready, cohesive data sets to power your ESG reporting. And you can obviously make that happen through identifying your data sources, land the data in a standardized model, and really be able to ingest data, aggregate data, and really make sense out of it. And then obviously third is to control the governance and the data sharing, and to in the end generate insights and really track your progress. Now, if you as I mentioned, Microsoft launched the Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability. Let's have a look at that, because the goal of this platform is really to help you as an organization to accelerate on sustainability, and it brings basically together all sorts of solutions that are provided in the ecosystem already, in the Microsoft ecosystem, and really offers a complete infrastructure. So the platform is made up out of several solutions, such as the Microsoft Sustainability Manager to record, calculate, and report on emissions and water and waste. And then there's the project ESG Lake, which is a tool to collect and manage ESG data and reporting. And then last, there's the Microsoft Purview Compliance Manager, which facilitates the CSRD reporting templates, but it's also continuously being updated by Microsoft on future templates as well. Now, let's dive into this Sustainability Manager first. So this is just to give you a very short idea. We don't have too much time left, so I'm just going to touch it briefly. I also invite you to try it for free. You can download it, or you can subscribe to it and join a 1 month free plan. Because yeah, like I said, there's no time to demo everything, but it's really important to understand that it's a solution designed to address the need to record and calculate and report emissions, to break down the data silos, and yeah, basically across various aspects of your operations. It also offers the visualization tools to help streamline the reporting process, to set up goals and really track your reduction plans. Now here's some print screens I briefly want to share with you to give you an idea of what's available. So you can set up goals, you can see where you're on track and where you're at risk and what goals you met. You can add new goals, you can edit goals, and fill in a description, parent goal, organizational units, etc. But also to report on your emissions, the scope 1, 2, 3 emissions, etc. In the top bar, you find some forecasting capabilities as well. And obviously on the left side, you find your data import, where you can really extract all types of data sources. Now, what's interesting to before I mention that, here's the Microsoft Purview Compliance Manager. So you'll find the CSRD reporting templates here. Now, what's interesting to mention is that it's fully integrated with artificial intelligence. So it's one of the high priorities of Microsoft artificial intelligence. So they already embedded AI into all Microsoft products in the form of Copilot, as they call it. There's already Copilot for our ERP solution, Business Central. So you can really ask AI all types of questions to analyze data, for example, but it's also available in your Microsoft 365 subscription. But like I said, also in Microsoft Sustainability Manager, where you can ask about certain CSRD reports. Now, having said that, I also wanted to briefly touch the role of ERP. Obviously, we provide a centralized data repository for all business functions, right? So from finance to purchase to supply chain, all this data is centralized in one single source of truth to check with data around, energy consumption, transportations, carbon emissions, etc. Now, it's also a platform that can be added. You can add apps to your Business Central environment, for example, and new apps are being developed to calculate your emissions, for example, based on employee expenses, or other type of functionalities to report on your transportations and your emissions that is created. Now, also in terms of workflows, obviously your workflows help to make sure that everyone's doing their part to be sustainable. For example, you can make sure that if energy contracts need to be approved by a sustainability officer before actually purchasing or agreeing on a contract. And then there's the reporting and analytics part. Obviously, ERP systems provide strong analytics capabilities. Now, one of the things that was released 2 weeks ago, I know some customers of mine are in this webinar and are all live on Business Central SaaS or going live soon. So they will have this functionality right in the upcoming weeks, as Microsoft is currently upgrading all environments because the last release was April 1st. And this is one of the cool new features that was in this last release of 2 weeks ago. So you really have some carbon emission tracking functionalities right from your ERP solution. So it really offers some sustainability journals, some built-in calculation methods, a chart of sustainability accounts, so you can really start organizing and analyzing and reporting on your emissions right from your ERP solution. So this is really very exciting to see, and we really, as an ERP partner, we follow this very closely. Now, there's also more because you know, as you know, the power of Business Central is also in the ecosystem and the partner network of thousands of partners that develop apps for Business Central, and some app builders are publishing apps on sustainability. And Continia, a Danish company, is on the brink of launching their app in this spring, also to track on your carbon footprint and extract data from purchase orders and invoices to really calculate emissions. And it writes into Business Central and also integrated with other solutions of Continia. For example, Continia also offers functionality to report expenses, expense management of certain employees you might have, so you can easily track your emissions based on, you know, taxi receipts or transports you did, or hotel overnight stays. So it's not there yet, but it's to be released in this spring. So this is really exciting to see. Now there's lots to tell more, but we have limited time, so I'm already over time. So I just want to say, if you want to know more, if you want to know more how Microsoft ERP helps you accelerate on this journey, please contact us. Just to give you an idea what we do, like I said, we are Microsoft ERP partner specifically for fashion and retail companies, 4 offices in 3 countries, Benelux area is what we cover. In the end, we really help you optimize business processes, make smart decisions, and connect to your business in real time to all sorts of other platforms, such as Delogue PLM or tex.tracer platform. Now, this is basically a functional overview of what's inside Business Central with the Power Platform below. And we help several 225 customers in the Benelux with optimizing business process. For example, these customers, and we obviously do not do this alone. We have a lot of partners where we work very closely with. Delogue and tex.tracer are 2 of them, and we also act with some customers, or we share a lot of customers together as well, like Vingino, for example. Now, that was it for now. We really come close to the end of the webinar, so thank you all for joining us today. I think we've covered a lot of ground, so I hope you really found the discussion valuable. And if we didn't get to your questions, please reach out, but also keep an eye on the upcoming events or content that can benefit you that is shared on our websites, on the tex.tracer website, Delogue or TCOG website. You can subscribe to, for example, newsletters or LinkedIn company pages. So before we go, again, I want to thank Anja and Yolanda for their input. Thank you very much, and hope to see you again. And for the attendees, thank you for being us today, and wish you a great day.
Thanks all. Have a nice day.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.
Thanks.